Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulihi al-Kareem. Wa ala ahli bayti at-tayyibin at-tahirin. Salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allah says in the Holy Quran, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ati'u Allah wa ati'u Rasulah wa ulil amri minkum. فإن تنازعتم في شيء فردوه إلى الله والرسول إن كنتم تؤمنون بالله واليوم الآخر. O you who believe, obey Allah and obey the Messenger and those who are given authority from among you. And if you have a dispute in any matter, return it to Allah and His Messenger if you believe in Allah and the last day. Next week would be the week of the Day of Qadir, which is the day when the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam gathered all of the Hujjaj that were on the crossroads away from Mecca and going back to their homelands. For a very, very important announcement, which was the appointment of Imam Ali alayhi salam as the successor or his wali to the Muslims after he would pass away. This has been a very important sticking point between Muslims with respect to this particular issue, and people have tried to reduce the differences among us to one that was mere politics. But if we take into consideration the real nature of leadership in Islam, the real nature of the successorship of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we would realize that this successorship, reflecting Islam and the unity of Islam, that the politics and the spirituality go hand in hand and cannot be separated. So the person who has to follow the Holy Prophet and take the reins of leadership of the Muslim Ummah is not just the person who is a political head, but he's also and should also be a spiritual guide. This issue is so important that Imam Rida alayhi salam, the 8th successor to the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, is reported to have said that the similitude of the believers in accepting the guardianship or the wilayah of the commander of the believers, Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali alayhi salam, on the day of Qadir at Khum, which is the place where this announcement took place, is like that of the angels prostrating before Adam. So the believers who accepted the wilayah or the right of successorship to the Holy Prophet Muhammad to be Ali alayhi salam, those who accept it are like the angels who prostrated before Adam. And the similitude of those who turned away from the guardianship of the commander of the believers on the day of Qadir is like that of Iblis. It's very, very harsh words, because when we look at the story, we see that the angels, after a certain hesitation, were convinced with the proof of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and submitted to Adam. They bowed down to Adam. But Iblis, who was known to have been jealous of Adam's position, refused to bow down to him. One of the reasons why Iblis did this was that he thought that despite Allah's command that he was better than Adam, and therefore he was not entitled to bow down to him. In some of the stories, they say that after Allah made Adam, before he put his spirit into him, Adam lay in the garden as a body, and Iblis went into his mouth and came out the other side and said, "This man is hollow. I could influence him. I could infiltrate him." And therefore, he was baffled with respect to Allah's commandments. That indicates that one of the reasons why the people who did not accept the position of Imam Ali alayhi salam were of the mentality that said to themselves, well, I can have power over him. I could outmaneuver him in politics. This is exactly what they did in the Bani Sahifa, where they seized the power and took control of the Islamic Ummah. The other thing about Iblis was that he was so consumed with his self-importance that he was unable to see the wisdom behind Adam's appointment as Allah's vice chairman or vice regent in creation. And Allah had proven it to them by having Adam teach the angels the names that he taught to Adam that the angels did not know. Now, we don't want to get into deeply what these names were, but what we can say with certainty that it was a form of knowledge, and that it was Adam's possession of this knowledge that entitled him to be the leader of the people of paradise, of the world, of the creation. Sorry, I would like to take this off. I don't want to be interrupted. Ya salawat, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So, because of this, Iblis did not accept Adam, and because of these very same criteria, the criteria of power, the criteria of the sense of self-importance, other people did not accept Imam Ali alayhi salam as well. We see in all religions, in all true religions, this particular pattern, and Islam is no different to this, that when the founder of that religion is about to leave this world, he always appoints someone to take over the helm of the religion after he is left. No founder of a religion leaves his flock rudderless. He always puts in position someone who is supposed to take the reins and control and guide the people. And so we have, for example, the successorship of prophethood, for example. And when there is no prophet to come after, or in a long period of time, you find that they appointed certain wise men or sages, where you find, for example, among the Jews, you call them the judges, and so forth. So you always found this type of tradition taking place. Since the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the last messenger, the person who is supposed to take over from him would not be a messenger, but would somebody who possesses the spiritual authority to be able to take the helm. Not the political authority only, but the spiritual authority. And this spiritual authority is what we call wilaya. Imam Ali, his appropriateness for this is described in the prophetic hadith, which says, Ana madinatul ilm wa aliyun babuha. I am the city of knowledge, and Ali is its gate. This indicates the esoteric function of Imam Ali alayhi salam as the gate to knowledge. This gate symbolizes the path of initiation. Spiritual knowledge is not something that is transmitted in a classroom for a general population. Spiritual knowledge is transmitted by a process of initiation. This process of initiation takes the different forms in different religious institutions, but this basically involves recognizing who your spiritual leader is, being able to establish the relationship between that spiritual leader and the founder or the head of that religion by what we call a silsila, a chain of transmission. And in acknowledging that person as the legitimate and rightful person in that chain, one makes a very important step in that initiation. So Imam Ali alayhi salam represented this particular reality, the reality of initiation as an avenue to the Muhammadan mysteries, the Islamic mysteries and secrets of the religion. Because of this esoteric character, because of this mystical character, Shiism is a middle path between the literalism of the ulama, the fuqaha, the jurists, and the excessive introversion of the mystics. You see, religion tends to sometimes take two extreme roads. When a religion first comes into existence, it is a perfect unity. When it is brought and when it exists at the time of the quote-unquote founder. I want to use that word founder because it's easier to say. The Holy Prophet didn't found Islam. Allah revealed Islam to the Prophet. But when it is the time of that Prophet, the religion is one. It is after that Prophet goes away that the religion develops into branches. And this is a natural occurrence in all religions. They develop into branches. And each of these branches, insofar as they are connected to the trunk, the tree itself, is an orthodox expression of that religion. It represents a certain atmosphere. It represents a certain personality that had been latent in that religion, which over the course of time manifested itself as a separate branch. And so you find, when you look at Islam, you find that one of the things that determines the branching of religion is that relationship between the exoteric and the esoteric, or the outward aspect of the religion, the legal aspect of the religion, as well with respect to the internal aspect of the religion, the mystical aspect of the religion, the spiritual aspect of the religion, if you can say so. Because religion has a civilizing function in society, in the world. When we look at every major civilization except this one, which is an aberration, you find that every civilization has been a religious civilization. There's no civilization in classical history that has not been devoid of the central role of religion. So it is not true, it is a great error for people to think that religion is some sort of backwardness, that religion has nothing to do with the world, that religion has nothing to do with the development of mankind as an outward thing, not an inward personal thing, which is fine, but as a collective. It is a very wrong thing to say, because every civilization, except the modern civilization, which also has roots in Christianity, but which has rejected those roots and have now established itself upon the pillars of secularism and even atheism, as you find in many of the communist countries and so on. It is religion that establishes society. And for religion to establish society, it must have law. You can't have a society without law. Even Christianity, which to a certain extent rejected Jewish law in favor of forgiveness and the Spirit and so forth, you find that they themselves had to resort to Roman law in order to govern society. Okay. So you have this reality, the reality of law as a means of pulling together the elements, the most important elements, the material elements of a society. But above that, even though that is important, above that, higher than that, is the mystical path, is the path of gnosis, or the path of Irfan. We call it many different things. The path of contemplation, the path of love, the path of self-sacrifice, the path of what we call basira, the means whereby we can become aware of hidden realities and so forth. We have this as well. And many times you have a conflict or a tension between these two particular streams. Because the path of law is a certain type of petrified perspective. It's a kind of a concretized perspective. Whereas the path of Irfan, the path of spirituality, is something that is much more flexible and much freer and so forth and so on. So Islam possessed these and possesses these two particular characteristics. And when we say Imam Ali alayhi salam is the gate towards the city of knowledge, being the path of initiation towards knowledge, we're talking about the path of initiation towards knowledge on these two particular levels. And Shiism reflects this. Shiism reflects this in the sense that it is a middle path between the law and love, or esotericism. In the Sunni school of thought, the domination of law was much more predominant. And so you find that they're branching out into a more rigid, more philosophical, more rational or rational-centric type of direction. But because that emphasis creates certain spiritual tensions in the soul, you found that it made accommodation for the development of a separate stream called Sufism. And it's in the Sufism that you found the esoteric aspect. But since Sufism was a separate stream from the law, you found that Sufism tended to be prone to excesses and to deviations and to these types of things. And so you find, for example, in the Shia school of thought, the word Sufi has become a bad stereotype, which I think is a bit of an error, because Sufism is not and cannot be only identified or described by excess or deviation. No, you find very, very notable people who are called Sufis, whom we Shia ourselves use their books and study their writings, and their writings influence us. For example, the writings of Ibn Arabi and Al-Ghazali, for example. Whereas in the Shia school of thought, we recognize the chain of authority going back to the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam of the 12 Imams that succeeded him, this is not recognized in the Sunni school of thought. Yes, they do recognize many of our Imams, but they recognize them as scholars, as knowledgeable men, as great men, but not as spiritual successors to the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The only group among our Sunni brethren that does recognize them as the poles, the spiritual poles of their age, is the Sufi school of thought. The other day, I was traveling in London with somebody, and the person was telling me that in, I think it was Mauritius, they had a Sufi community that commemorated the birthday of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, for example, and celebrated it. It was a very, very important celebration, and that some of the prayers that we say collectively among ourselves, they say in secret, because these prayers are tools towards spiritual realization. For example, Joshan al-Kabir, and the Dua Kumail, Whereas for us, these tools are open to all of us. With respect to them, it is something that is only for the initiated. And it can only be effective if you are initiated into that particular Sufi order. This does not mean to say that Shiaism should be sitting pretty and not be worried, because in fact this tension within Shiaism still exists, because we have the combination of the law and we have the combination of the way, the tariqah, the spiritual esoteric way. We have as well the same type of tensions taking place within our madhab. And so even now, today, you find sometimes hostility between those who follow the path, the exclusive path of fiqh, and those who follow the exclusive path of irfan. There have been many books and indications that Sufism has been derived from Shiaism, and that in fact, in times of persecution, the Shias sort of passed themselves off as Sufi in order to escape persecution. Now, there are many indications where the Holy Prophet has shown that Imam Ali alayhi salam was the rightful successor to him. And many of these indications point to Imam Ali's great spiritual knowledge that could be at the disposal of the Muslim Ummah. The Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "There is among you a person who will fight for the interpretation of the Quran just as I fought for its revelation." And he indicated that it was Ali. Now the issue of the interpretation of the Quran is very important here. Why it's very important is that we believe and we know that the Holy Quran is a book that is for all time. It is a book that has all knowledge in it in a condensed form. And it is up to us to read the book as a combination of symbols that would indicate the reality of the times that we live in, and so on. And this is what we call interpretation. We mean by interpretation the use of the Quran to explain itself in different times when conditions change. So when you look at the Quran, you mustn't look at the Quran as a static book. When the Quran is talking about Badr and Uhud and so forth, these are not just events that occurred in history. These are also events that occur in the human soul. That the kuffar exist, the forces of evil, things that exist in the human soul. The forces of belief exist in the human soul. The prophetic presence is something that exists in the human soul, and the devilish presence is something also that exists in the human soul. The human soul is therefore a battleground for different forces vying to take over the personality or the person of the individual. And so when we look at it from this particular way, and we see the types of dynamics that exist between these different forces, we are able to get a glimpse of the forces within our own soul itself. The same thing can be said for the story of Imam Hussein in Karbala. For some of us, we tend to look at the event of Karbala as something that happened in history, and we take aside in that historical thing that happened in the past. But that's not the full story. The tragedy of Imam Hussein alayhi salam in Karbala is what we call meta-history. It is history that is not bound by time. It is history that replays itself, that remanifests itself with different players, but all these players on the stage in the same role as those people who acted on that stage of history in the past. And to the extent that we could recognize the forces that were arrayed against each other in Karbala in our lives, both in our inner lives and in our external lives, determines how successful we will be in controlling our inner reality or our outward reality. And one very good example of that is the victory of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The victory of Imam Khomeini and his way of thinking over one of the most powerful power in the Middle East at the time, which was Iran. The Shah was, Iran at that time was described by President Carter as an island of stability in the Middle East. The Iranian military was considered to be the policeman of the Gulf. There was two people who were ruling militarily the Middle East at the time. One was Iran and one was Israel. And they had some really close relationships to each other. And it seemed like nothing could destroy or change this particular society. Iran was the most important base of the United States in the Persian Gulf. But when Imam Khomeini came on the scene, one aspect, and a very important aspect of his victory, was to describe the situation in terms of the forces arrayed over 1,000 years ago on the plains of Karbala. So the people of Iran saw themselves as Hussein, or as the supporters of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. They saw Imam Khomeini as Hussein, and they saw the Shah as Yazid. And they entered themselves on that battleground and won. Now, this is a unique example, but this is something that can play out in our own lives on a more peaceful basis, but nevertheless a more profound basis in what we do. Every day we get up, where is Badr? Where is Uhud? Where are the munafiqeen? Where are the hypocrites? Where are the kafirin? Where are the unbelievers? On whose side am I on today? Once you can place yourself in that scene, you are able to act with decisiveness in your environment. Give salawat to the Holy Prophet Muhammad and his family. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. So, wilaya then, or spiritual guardianship, is a prolongation of the spiritual leadership and the esoteric guidance of the Prophet. And the fact that religion needs these two dimensions makes sense, because everything has a body and a soul. Everything has an outward and an inward reality. And when you separate them, they can't really exist. The soul needs the body to be able to operate in this world. And the body needs the soul to be able to transcend this world. So when you take spirituality, or the esoteric, or the mystical, or the wisdom aspect out of a religion, you're left with a shell. And this is what is described, for example, the scribes and Pharisees in the time of the Jews. There were people who were consumed with debating law and splitting hairs, and were not as scrupulous with respect to their spirituality, with respect to ideas like realities like love, with respect to realities like sacrifice. It is not that they are mutually exclusive. You cannot live on one level and not on the other. You have to live on both levels, at least in this world. And one symbolic aspect of this in the Holy Quran is the role of Aaron, of Harun, in his relationship with Hazrat Musa. In some of the interpretations of Holy Quran, when Prophet Moses is symbolic of the path of law. He's symbolic of the path of law. You know, for example, the story of him and Khidr, when they're going on the trip, and Khidr does certain things. Moses makes judgments about this based upon law. But Khidr's actions are based upon basira, are based upon spiritual witnessing. So Moses goes up on the mountain, and he stays up there, and who's in charge? Aaron, Harun. Harun, from the esoteric interpretations of the Holy Quran, Harun is a symbol of the esoteric, a symbol of the mystical, and he can't keep it together. He loses control of the people because he's soft. Okay? And so by the time Moses comes down, the people have revolted against him, they even threatened to kill him, and now they're worshipping the calf. What it indicates, some of these great mystical teachings say, is it indicates that the esoteric aspect, the pure mystical aspect, cannot govern society. It could put the heart in society, it could put the soul in society, it could infuse a society with love, but it cannot provide that harshness or that stringency that is necessary to keep the rebellious forces in society at bay. And Imam Ali alayhi salam, in his personality, represents these two particular traits. The trait of the esoteric and the trait of the esoteric. So we are encouraged to be the followers of Imam Ali alayhi salam. We are encouraged to distinguish ourselves by our allegiance towards him. And so you have many, many hadith that talk about Imam Ali alayhi salam as being just that, as being a margin, as being a distinguishing point between the believers and the non-believers, the sincere and the hypocrites and so on. So there's a hadith by the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi that says, حُبُّ عَلِيٍّ يَأْكُلُ الذُّنُوبِ كَمَا تَأْكُلُ النَّارِ الْخَتَمِ. The Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, love for Ali consumes sins like fire consumes wood. Love for Ali consumes sins like fire consumes wood. Now, from any Sunnis in here? You know, from a Sunni point of view, that was some pretty strange. Okay? They're going to get a lot of issues with that. But when we investigate, one of the most important things in this particular statement is love. Okay? Love for Ali. And what is love? Love is the identification of the beloved with the lover with the beloved. When you're in love, you're no longer yourself. You're the other person. You're standing, you're sitting, and your eyes just roll up in your head, and you look up in the sky, and people are looking at you. You're not there. You're with the beloved. Love is the ultimate identification. Some people describe love as the attraction to beauty. If one sees something that is beautiful, and beautiful is described in many ways. Beautiful is described as complete perfection, as perfection. One physical aspect of perfection is a beautiful face. And a beautiful face is a face that, for example, is symmetrical. It's a face where everything is in its right and proper place. And we call this beauty. So beauty is a form of perfection. And when people see beauty, they are attracted to it, and they want to be part of it. They want to be immersed in it. So beauty leads to love. And love is both the attraction and the absorption in the beautiful, in that which is the beloved. So when we love Imam Ali alayhi salam, we can only love Imam Ali alayhi salam if we become like him. It means then that we must have certain traits that are common between us and Imam Ali alayhi salam. And therefore, in having these traits, this love practically is something that removes from us evil, because Imam Ali alayhi salam is a perfect man. Imam Ali alayhi salam is a man that doesn't have any faults. And when we say he's a perfect man, it does not mean to say that he's some kind of idealistic thing that is unbelievable. A perfect man is one who can eliminate his own limitations. He's aware of his limitations, and he's able to act in a way to neutralize them. A very good example is when that enemy spat in his face when he was about to kill him. When Imam Ali was fighting him, was it on the wood, and he spat in his face. What did Imam Ali alayhi salam do? He turned around, he put his sword down, and he walked away. And after a while, he came back and he dispatched that guy to hell. And they asked him afterwards, they said, why did you do that? When he spat in your face, why didn't you take him out right away? And he said, because I became angry. I know that when I became angry, if I continued fighting, I would not be fighting for Allah, I'd be fighting for my nafs. So I calmed down my anger, and I did what I had to do. This is the symbol of a perfect man. So when we love Imam Ali alayhi salam, we become somewhat like him. And when we become like him, our negative traits will be removed away, and it is like fire burning wood. The Prophet also said to Ali, لا يحبك إلا مؤمن ولا يبغضك إلا منافق. Only a believer would love you, and only a hypocrite will hate you. Now, he didn't say a non-believer will hate you. He said a hypocrite will hate you. And what is hate? Hate is a lack of commonality. You don't have common traits with somebody. That's hate. Hate is the presence of contradictory types of qualities in people. You like treachery, and this one likes honesty. You hate each other because you do not have anything in common. He didn't say a kafir, he said a munafiq. What's a munafiq? What is a hypocrite? A hypocrite is somebody who recognizes the beauty of something, recognizes the beauty of truth, for example, but does not orient himself to it. And therefore, he, in the presence of other people, pretends to do so because he knows that other people are attracted to that and support that. So a hypocrite, in a sense, by his very hypocrisy, acknowledges the reality of that which he does not follow. Because only a hypocrite will hate you. I mean, a person who knows that you are the best, a person who knows that you are good, a person who knows that you are suitable for whatever position that you want to, or you are supposed to get, but he hates you for it. Imam Ali alayhi salam represents the beauty of deen. And therefore, the followers of Ali alayhi salam has certain characteristics. One of them is the love of truth. For example, the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi said, Aliyun ma'al haq wal haq ma'a Ali. Ali is with the truth, and the truth is with Ali. You cannot love Ali if you're not for the truth. And so we have to be able to strive to support the truth, even against ourselves. Truth is what corresponds to reality. And a Shia or a Muslim, a mu'min, a believer who supports Ali, must always be in touch with reality. And this is one of the consequences of truth. A Shia is somebody who is characterized by knowledge, because his Imam Ali alayhi salam is characterized by knowledge. We're the ones who love Imam Ali. If we love Imam Ali, then we should love knowledge. A Shia is a good example as a leader for other people. Imam Ali alayhi salam said, indeed, I do not encourage people to perform any act which I do not do, and I do not without performing it first. And I do not encourage people to not do something or to stay away from something apart from refraining from it myself. So to lead people is to do what you will tell them you want them to do, and to stay away from what you will tell them to stay away from. A very good example, a very nice example, is one day a woman came to the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to ask him about advice about her son being addicted to dates. I'm sure you've heard the story. And the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to her, come back tomorrow. So she came back the next day, and he gave the son advice and told him, don't eat so many dates and so forth and so on. And she asked the Prophet, well, why couldn't you tell him this yesterday? You know, he said, well, yesterday when you brought him to me, I was eating dates myself. Okay? So he was not going to be a contradictory example. You know, one of the problems of many of many religious people, of many religious preachers and so forth and so on, is that we tend to talk more than we tend to act. You know, it's very easy to stand and say, we should do this and we should do that, and you yourself don't do it. Okay? You know, this is a form of hypocrisy. And this is what Imam Ali alayhi salam is saying, who he is. If we want to identify with him, we have to be able to be like him. I'm running close to time. I see you getting on and see up there. I'm almost finished. We have to be brave. A Shia of Ali is a brave person. Imam Ali alayhi salam is reported to have said, indeed, I have never fled from the battlefield. I've never fled from the battlefield. And in many of the accounts, Imam Ali alayhi salam's armor was only a frontal armor. He didn't wear armor in the back because he was never one to run away from the enemy. And this is something that we have seen in the struggle of the battling Lebanese Shia against the invading Zionist forces. You know, Hassan Nasrallah was reported to have said, if you look at the Zionist forces who had been killed on the battlefield fighting against us, most of them were shot from behind because they were running away. But if you look at our martyrs, they were all shot from the front. These are people who are following the path of Imam Ali. But it's not just battlefield in terms of like guns and bullets. Whatever battlefield that we are on, the battlefield of our family, the battlefield of our society, I think it's a sign that I should get off of here. The battlefield of life, okay? We do not run away from it. And lastly, Imam Ali alayhi salam was someone who belittles the world. It is said that Imam Ali alayhi salam divorced the world 3 times. So the world could not affect him. A Shia is somebody who should be divorced from the world. Being divorced from the world does not necessarily mean that you don't have anything. It doesn't mean that you're walking around in rags and tatters. It means an attitude towards possession. And you don't identify your ego with what you have. This is the essence of Islamic poverty. I want to thank you. I'm sorry for taking your time. And inshallah, I hope to see you again sometime soon, inshallah. And I wish you all Eid Mubarak for Hadir Qom. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.